Welcome to Diner Talks with James. I'm your host, James. Yes, you gotta really figure out how I got the name, don't you? So super excited to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for coming out. It is a beautiful day. I hope that you all are having a beautiful day as well. As always, we start out the show with tonight's top three. Here we go. My boy Scott asked me, what are your top three dance songs that you would go so hard that you would dislocate your knee to again? Now, here's a funny story, my friends. At my senior prom, I dislocated my right knee dancing to Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman. Because you either got to go hard or go home when that song comes on, y'all. So, but he asked me, what three songs would you also go just that on? First off, I would never go that hard again because it's petrifying, and now I'm scared of ever doing anything to my knees. But with that being said, here are the three first songs. Dance songs. I don't know. I used to club for a while. I used to be out and about. I loved to dance. My parents were all dancers at weddings. We go hard. The first top three songs that came to my head are these ones. And now here's the thing. There's nothing in here from Bruno Mars, no Justin Timberlake, no Michael Jackson, because they all need like their own separate, like top three Bruno Mars dance song, top three Michael Jackson dance songs. They're worthy of their own categories. So these are the next three random songs that came to my head. First off, Eve, Tambourine. Get your tambourine on, give me some of that. Hey, get your tambourine on, give me. Great song. It's a banger, especially when that beat drops. Next, Macklemore, Can't Hold Us. Better we go back. This is a moment. So you know that one. And last but not least, my friends, Destiny's Child, Bootylicious. Y'all, I used to bang that. I had a 1987 Buick Grand National with T-tops. Used to take the T-tops off, had 10s in the trunk. Used to blast Bootylicious, driving around my college campus. Yes, I was single. All right, next. Top three comedians were asked of me recently. Top three comedians. This is tough. Runner-up like Chris Rock. I love John Mulaney. All these individuals, but the top three comedians that have the biggest impact on my comedy career. Is Brian Regan. Brian Regan is an exceptional comedian, super funny. Very clean. If you haven't seen him yet, you should check him out. Next, Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is one of my favorite comedians because I believe Jerry Seinfeld's jokes are so good that you could just read them and they would still be funny. The man is a surgeon of a writer. It is incredible. It's incredible. And lastly, my favorite comedian of all time is the person who got me into comedy in the first place, and that's Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney Dangerfield, that classic shtick, right? Oh, boy, I tell you. Oh, this girl told me to come over. There was nobody home. I went over. There was nobody home. Right? Come on, y'all. It's just good comedy. Those are my top three favorite comedians, y'all. Let me know who your favorite comedians, people who use the commode are in the chat. All right. Appreciate it. That's the next one. And last but not least, top three. These are the top three officers that should be arrested for the murder of Breonna Taylor. Here we go. Brett Heckinson, John Mattingly, and Miles Congrove. Okay, time to get behind bars, boys. You killed that woman. So, my friends, that's tonight's top three. Thank you so much for coming with me here today, y'all. We have an exceptional guest. Her name is Jess Pettitt. Sometimes she goes by Jess Pettitt. Sometimes it's JP. Sometimes it's Pettitt. I really don't know what to call her. We'll find out in a minute, maybe. But she is an exceptional human being. By far one of the most giving, loving individuals that I know. She pours her heart into everybody who meets her. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, actually. She is also a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. She's been teaching diversity and equity and inclusion before LGBT was even the acronym. You know what I mean? Like, she's been in the game for a minute. And she's incredible, but she's also one of the best speakers I know. And on top of that, I believe she just made her own chai for the first time. So very fancy. Y'all, can we do me a favor? Can y'all start clapping it out right now for the one and only Jess Pettitt?
What?
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for coming to my favorite diner.
Welcome to the diner, Jessica Pettitt. Can I take your order? What is your diner order, Jess Pettitt? You lived in New York for a while.
Interesting question, because my New Year's resolution for 2020 was to become a vegetarian. And I have not been to a diner in 2020, and it has actually been a worry of mine because a Reuben is my diner order.
A Reuben?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
is that the Thousand Island dressing? Is that what they put on the Reuben?
A Thousand Island dressing, yes. I'm as Karen as a Reuben gets. I also have been known to eat a sticky bun as the appetizer, so that would still work.
Yeah.
And I actually like a good egg salad sandwich with extra pickles.
Extra pickles, implying that there's, I mean, I don't even know if I put pickles on an egg salad sandwich. So you want extra pickles?
Nobody does unless I'm making it. And so then I have to ask for extra pickles. And then if they have tater tots, then that's dessert, which I also eat first.
Tater tots for dessert that you eat first. This all makes sense. Here's what I love about this conversation you and I are about to have, my friend, is that you and I both have strong cases of ADHD. What? So I have no idea where we're going tonight, but I'm really excited.
I brought a glass of water. I brought some ice cream. I'm stationary. What do you want?
Stationary. That's my one of my go-to diner orders is the chocolate vanilla milkshake. That's my black and white. So yeah. Yeah. My friends at home call that the racially harmonized shake, and they don't know anything about anything. So,
so question. Now I have a technique question. With the milkshake, do you eat the extra container first, or do you go straight for the presented version and then get your leftovers later?
Great question. First off, if they don't have the second metal tin on the side, it's not a real diner. So
you don't go back.
You don't go back. No, that's it. No. But I eat the presented one first, oftentimes because I get whipped cream on it, and I'm not interested in that whipped cream hanging out for too long. So I get the whipped cream out of the way, and then I eat the presented one first, and then I go for the piece de la résistance, or whatever they call it, in the metal tin. How about you?
For me, opposite. Because the glass that it's in should be cold. And I don't like whipped cream, so I don't have to worry about any dangerous floaty bits. And the metal thing that it was just in a blender in is never cold. So I eat it first before it gets all melty. Then I go for the presented.
Oh, interesting. That's fair. My diner experience has been the opposite. Usually the metal bill comes out with a whole bunch of frosty stuff on it. So I mean, it's like, this will be fine for a while. Did you ever partake in the New Jersey tradition of disco fries, where you get French fries topped with cheese and then gravy on top of that?
You had me until gravy.
I'm surprised I had you past Jersey.
Well, I'm betraying my southern roots, but I don't really like gravy. I don't understand it.
Okay.
So many amazing condiments out there. Why would you go with liquefied flour? I don't. Nope. So
it's brown.
Brown gravy is even more questionable because it's liquefied flour that turned brown.
Yeah, that's true.
Questions. Lots of questions.
That's awesome. I know you miss your time in New York so much so that you have the New York City subway system tattooed on yourself.
I do. Bam.
Yeah, indeed.
How do I do this being mirrored? There we go.
Yeah, it's backwards. It's really fun. That's why I wear a hat, because whenever I try to fix my hair, I just poke myself in the eye. We got some individuals who agree with your there we go. Tina likes your glasses. We got some people who agree with your description. I think that really is what it is when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah, for sure. Jess Pettitt, here's where I want to start with talking with you, because here is something that you and I have in common, besides a dashing wit.
Devastatingly good looking, amazing partners. Mm-hmm. We're in love with our dogs.
Yep. Yeah, besides those things. Besides those things, the other thing that you and I love to do is give away what we do for free.
Captain Free Shit, as I like to call it.
Captain Free Shit. It's very interesting, and we do it all the time. You do it more than me, so you win the prize. Don't worry about it. But it's very interesting because we are both speakers. We're both trainers. We both exist in that world, and you've been in the game for a minute now. And
thanks for making me feel old, by the way, in your little introduction. She's been doing this since there were letters. True. True.
She learned math on an abacus. So, but so anyway, TI-80 boo-hoo, Jess Pettitt. Anyway, so with that being said, you and I love to give away stuff for free, and now there's some real beauty in that. There's some real good person in that, but there's also eventually some real we don't value ourselves in that. Right, and we don't necessarily we don't necessarily think our time is worth it, or we listen to people's stories and we like care about their feelings and their situations, and we're like, you get this for free because I like you. I'm curious for you, what has your journey been in learning to define your value?
Well, first off, thank you for making it present tense, because the journey is still ongoing. I'm probably still planning the playlist and packing my snacks. The third leg of the stool of giving away stuff for free and self-value is that my shrink costs money. So she doesn't give away her time.
Yeah.
But she is required for the other two legs of the three-legged stool. My self-worth is constantly up for question and reevaluation. Constantly. Mm-hmm. Part of that is like the low-hanging fruit there is like fraud, imposter syndrome, blah, 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 whatever.
Bullshit.
So then, because I have no other monetizable skills or experience other than diversity, equity, and inclusion work, then there's like the parade of privileged identities that are up front and center. I am very aware that I have a lot of privileged identities, and I am doing diversity and inclusion work from those places of privilege as a place of privilege, mm-hmm. and it is valuable. That is a very hot potato to just really hold on to, because you're like, bing, 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 a million reasons why that should not be happening.
Yeah.
So that's a ongoing thing. Doing, and like intellectually, like doing work from subordinated and marginalized places, I think is valued in our culture, because that's where you build community, and like, what would bumper sticker businesses do without it, right? So like, but to intentionally be doing work from my dominant identities, it's going counterculture and counterculture inside DEI work to do the work from the dominant places. So like,
I hope y'all are keeping up.
Right. I should have a flip chart. My self-value, the part that's easy for me to focus on is that I do things differently on purpose, because doing them the same way doesn't work. So when I'm in the DEI kind of leg of my value, yeah, it's the voices that I'm working against that are making me undervalue myself. So then I can kind of get back on that and be like, oh no, thank you very much for playing, but I'm getting back to work. But I do have a nemesis. And the nemesis is I care. And the real nemesis, if I'm being really honest, the caring one is kind of the easy one. Like, I'm a woman, so I'm supposed to care about people's stories. False. The real one is that I love to work, which is actually probably our biggest commonality.
Okay.
And I believe saying yes is going to get me through a global pandemic. Saying yes makes me feel safe and prepared, because I've done 8 hours of free work today prior to this. So I'm not nervous about being on video. Will this joke work? How am I going to do this? Like, I've been in the saddle all day long. I'm good.
Tight and ready with the jokes.
Yeah. So, and I love my job, right? So then those circle around each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Just in case people aren't aware, we'll probably use a bunch of acronyms today. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion work, and that's the new fancy term that we're calling it now, DEI. Yeah. But yeah. I mean, it's so interesting that you mentioned like it's tough to do the work it's tough to get compensated for the work from the point of privilege that you come from, and whatnot. I definitely am feeling that right now for sure in this current state of the country, where it's like, I have been doing diversity trainings and work on inclusion and college campuses and some businesses for a bunch of years, but it was never anything that it's not a platform that I stood on necessarily, right? Like if you go to goodenoughnow.com, just as website, you immediately get slapped in the face with that. Versus me, it's like 5 rungs down on the ladder. And so it's interesting because it's now like, it looks like I just showed up. The people who know me know that I've been here. But for other people, and you know this, right? Like you don't get to walk into a room and be like, no, people who look just like you liked me in that room over there, so I'm good. Like that's not the way it works. But you also can't roll into that room being like, let me tell you why I'm one of the good ones. And so it's very interesting. It's very interesting to think about valuing yourself in that space. But I think also even bigger than that, for me, a lot of it comes down to two things that you were just talking about. One is I love to work. I would rather be working and not getting paid than not working. Right. Right. So that's number one. And then number two is that when I became a speaker, the moment that I had was literally like I was that fat kid with acne laying in the prone position on his couch with Cheetos down his shirt, holding a gaming controller, playing some sort of video game, and people walked in the room and be like, we want you to play video games for the rest of your life, young man. And it's like, me? And so it's like, it just doesn't feel real, right? Like, because I did this for free for so long, not just because I didn't think I was good enough. That is another part of it, though. But
good enough.
Nailed it. But drink. We both have water. But still.
I did drink dinner, though.
Good for you. Good for you. But yeah, it's just like, sometimes it doesn't feel real to get paid for this work that I absolutely have done for free, happily, and would still do for free.
Absolutely. And I think when you were speaking, what it made me think of is I love the work and I respect how hard it is to do this work. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's just going to come natural to me if I take a week off. I'm going to feel anxious. I'm going to feel rusty. I'm going to need to catch up. So my workaholic miss works really well with, I need to have time in the saddle because I respect my craft. Mm-hmm. I can respect my craft all day, but I respect my expertise and the length of time that I've actually been doing this work. Yes. Much thinner ice there, which is interesting because often doing work from privileged identities, when I or anybody else from a dominant place get challenged, one of the first things we do is like roll out our resume about how good we are at things. But it feels different when we start talking about our actual acknowledgement of our value. And that conversation I will skeetle away from. But I value the work that I do that I've been doing for a long time. And in order to be good at it, and it's hard, I have to keep doing it, which kind of taps into workaholic miss.
Sure.
Which actually gets me quite far away from valuing myself, taking care of myself, doing what I need to do.
Yeah. Being a workaholic is it's a bit of a disease. But I would be curious to hear, what does being a workaholic look like for you? Let's start there, and then I'm going to ask a follow-up question. What does it look like for you?
If we're talking about time, mm-hmm. I woke up this morning at 4:15, and I was at my computer checking email by 4:20. And then that acknowledges, I know 4:20, that acknowledges what I need to do for the day. Then I go and make a chai, which we can talk about chai. Mm-hmm. I go and make a chai, and I come back and start my to-do list that I set up the night before that starts before 5 a.m. Yeah. And that is my day. I I make lots of jokes that my boss does not know how to like calm down and take a day off.
Mhm.
And I love it. I love that since 4:30 this morning, every half hour to hour has been a wildly different thing and a wildly different conversation, back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Somewhere in there, I got my first pedicure in 4 months.
Oh,
She got a big tip. I had to prep for this. I love you. I had to prep.
yeah. We'll get to the feet section of the show. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. All the foot fetishists are like logging in.
Whatever it takes. I need these views.
Right. So I mean, I did that. I enrolled myself into an MBA program because I barely have a job right now. And I got chapter 5 homework done, and I'm ready for my midterm tomorrow. And I facilitated 3 conversations on whiteness with all white groups. And I helped a new speaker try to figure out what it is that she wants to do and introduce herself to some other people so she could set up a mastermind. Like, that's just what I've done since I got home from a pedicure.
Yeah.
And the workaholicness is that doesn't seem weird.
Mhm.
And I probably value, I mean, now we're getting shrinky, right? But like, I got accolades from my parents because of tasks I accomplished.
Mhm.
And so I now give myself accolades because of tasks I accomplish.
Mm.
And those tasks are deeply rooted into something that I morally care about. And somewhere in there is like a little baby tiny whispery kernel of value that I give myself.
Somewhere in there on on the 4th day of every 3rd month.
Like the little hazelnut inside, and then it's all the golden wrapper.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you ever think, is your nature of being a workaholic, do you ever feel like you're running from something and burying yourself in work?
When do I not feel that way? I think is maybe like when I'm literally on the stage in the moment where they're quiet and I'm talking is when I don't feel that way.
That's really the only time you don't feel that way?
I think so.
Yeah.
I generally feel dangerously close to being sweaty and out of breath all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't think that's ADHD. And like, and it's so funny when you get 2 funny people together because we're going to have like a super serious conversation. But I think the level of anxiety that I just carry because it's a Wednesday is so outlandishly high.
Mhm.
And it is paired with a deep motivation to do the best I can with what I got right now and trust that someone else will be able to take over if I can't do it, but I can't do everything, but I can do at least this thing, right? Like not to do the starfish story, but those 2 things together leave me close to breathless and almost sweaty, almost always.
Yeah. Because what would happen if you weren't doing this?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
like I tried to quit. I really did. And I had no other monetizable skill. I mean, I can fold a fitted sheet. Helpful.
Sure.
My linen closets, by the way, are on point right now. Thank you, COVID. I don't know what else I can do or couldn't. I have no idea what else I would be doing other than practicing and role modeling what it means to be wildly uncomfortable some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of and recognizing the difference of what it means to be uncomfortable versus, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like, that's just what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. In my life, I have a constant battle between these 2, let's call them warriors because it sounds cool. But it's probably just 2 old men sitting on a park bench. But anyway, these 2 warriors inside of me, and that balance, that one of them is legacy and the other one is presence.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the 2 things that are constantly going on inside of me. And legacy often wins way more than presence does. And that leads me to one of my biggest fears in life is that I'm going to get to the end of this thing called life and look back and be like, you kind of missed it, bro. Like you kind of like you mean, yeah, you did some cool things, yeah, you whatever, but like you weren't in the moment. You created moments, but you weren't in them. And so that's a weird thing for me, but it keeps driving me because the other fear is that the hypocritical one to that, the other fear is that I'm not going to do the most with the time that I have, right? Like this is my blip in the universe, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to make it bright. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And the concept of time and the universe, like this is our little blip, and I'm going to make a flash, right? Like I'm not interested in not doing that. And so it's like this weird push-pull, and it's that other side of legacy, of keep going, of make an impact, of that kind of stuff that really pulls me. You know, I told this story on a workshop that I did recently. But when I was younger, like high school-ish, I had a vivid, reoccurring dream that no one would come to my funeral. Like it literally, like it was me in the casket. My parents were there. My two brothers were there. And like the funeral parlor director was like, this is kind of awkward. And that was, I had that recurring dream over and over again, because it was like, you're not making a difference in anybody else's life, so why would they show up for yours? Or why would anybody show up? Like, and it's so deeply attached to low self-esteem, which I've battled with from a young age, and it's really it's interesting the way that has now like flipped into this fire of like, no, I will keep working. Right. And like, I'm gonna keep doing these free things. I got a gig today. I'm making $50. I can't wait. Send the check. Right. And the government could take its 10 out of it.
It's interesting because so my parents died when I was young, and my dad, upon his death, I got to read all his journals, and I'm a daddy's girl. Surprise, hence the haircut. And my dad had a very similar dream that no one would ever show up to his funeral. And if you read through his journals, it like shows up over and over and over again in his life. And when he died, there were 4,000 people who showed up to his funeral. 2 people helicoptered in from out of state to make it to his funeral. Yeah. And what I remember in that moment when I was reading these journals is like, how sad is it that when you were alive, he had no idea how many people he had impacted? Right. And so like from that point, I was like, I'm just going to assume I'm impacting people. Right. Like, so that's how I got past the like, I don't, you know. The other thing I would point out is that the flaw in the dream, and he articulated it very similar to you, me in the casket, my close family, no one else. But he used the words, no one showed up. So the other lesson I learned that I'm nudging you, my dear friend, is that your family showed up, but they don't count as somebody. Right. And so then I made a commitment to really try and have real relationships with the people who I know would show up. Maybe it's even out of obligation. But if they're going to show up to my funeral out of obligation, don't I owe them a real relationship? Like that was a huge turning point for me because, and it's one of the longest lasting lessons I learned from my father, right? Is that when you say these 4 people show up and no one comes, it dismisses their value, which to me spoke to, I don't actually value these people. And then I just have to assume that I'm making impact. So like, I don't know if this is masculinity and femininity, and we can talk about gender if we want, but my 2 things, the 2 warriors that you have, mine are 2 horses. Okay. You have to ride 2 horses at once. One of them is of ego and the other one is of humility. So if you spend too much time on the wrong horse, your friends will tell you. If you're the ego horse, write the copy on your website. And if it's the humility horse, get to learning. But now when we start talking about like whiteness or other things, like you don't get to stay on the learning horse forever. Like actually need to get to work.
Right.
And that's why you need the ego horse. But if you only stay on the ego horse, then you're one of the people who think like, I don't have a problem. Actually, that's the problem. So switch horses. So you have to have both at the same time.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love that battle of the two horses. That's really that definitely that speaks to me, because I think there are, when it comes back to this conversation of value, and thank you for sharing that story about your father as well. I appreciate that for sure. When it comes back to value, the humility horse neighs a lot louder than the other one for me, than the ego horse, right? And it's like, no, be humble, sit down. Like, I mean, even in the journey to become a speaker, I told myself, who are you to be a speaker? You didn't start from the bottom and now you're here. You grew up with a family of more than enough. You're white, heterosexual, male, straight. Like let me say that twice, because you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the kind of guy, when I piss, privilege comes out. And so it's like, who are you to be on this stage making money when all the speakers that you've seen before, lost their leg in Nam, or killed friends in drunk driving accidents, or were black and are telling you the story about what it means about racism, or like all of those kind of things that they have overcome. Like, I overcame like which shirt to wear today. And even that took me a solid 4 minutes. But like that idea of, I should not be paid for this, I should not, like, I don't deserve that, was something that I definitely wrangled with.
I mean, I'm still wrangling with that, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
If people will possibly excuse me, but if we're pissing out privilege to use your language, we are not storing that privilege in some kind of catheter bag for a later dump. We're actually actively using our privilege to get to the work that we need to be doing without burdening other people, or we're trying to, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's a really important clarification. I think that both of us need to remind each other that we are using the platform and the privileges that we have to do the best we can with the privileges that we have and what we have access to. And the humility piece is recognizing, like, how the hell did I get here? And damn straight I'm here. Yeah. Right? And I hope you take this advice. Like, I mean, there's this like posture, right? Like, it's funny to start off with another thing we have in common that we don't know, but to start off with one of the top threes about like what songs you're going to dance really hard to. I also blew out my knees dancing to the Electric Slide. Of course, it was to the Electric Slide.
The Electric Slide.
Right? I know. But what's important is that you and I are both go hard people.
Yeah.
And we do it externally, I would say, from our ego place often. And we go hard internally just as much. And what I love about you, and why I was the first time I met you, I was like, I have got to become friends with that dude, is that I could see the full tilt of going hard externally and internally. And I didn't want you to get wrapped around the axle on the internal and get away from doing it external. Mm-hmm. And I saw that struggle in me, in you, and not because I'm 3,000 years older than you, but because I still do that too. And part of Workaholic Miss doesn't give me the option to only go hard internally. I've got a webinar I have to do, so figure it out. Go. That's how I monitor that dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the way you put that. So for you, in thinking about determining your value and when you choose to give away stuff or not, for people who are thinking about getting into any sort of entrepreneurial venture, especially like creatives and whatnot.
Watch out for global pandemics.
Watch out. But it's it's first piece of advice. Watch out for global pandemics. Perfect. But in thinking about like the advice that you would give to somebody in how do you start off with valuing yourself? Like how do you get there, right? I mean, like you and I have talked about, we still don't do it that well, but it's come around, right? Our value has increased. We have asked for bigger numbers to different corporations that have been, that we've been fortunate enough to get to speak to. But like, how do you, like, going back, how would you tell yourself, like, hey, you need to value yourself, and why?
Mm-hmm. So I thought of something that happened the other day, and then I have kind of my usual suspect answer.
Great. Okay.
So the other day, and I'm getting ready to talk about numbers and money. There's everyone's preface. So the other day, I got my very first virtual global keynote for Pride Month to an employee resource group of a company that has thousands of employees all around the planet, right? Like, thank you very much.
Hell yeah.
So very early on in this business, I learned, here's a pro tip, announce, be the last person to hang off of any conference call. Zoom, phone, doesn't matter. Be the last person to disconnect always, because you get some very interesting tidbits when they think you ain't there. So that's exactly what happened. So everybody hangs up from the hiring meeting or whatever. And the last thing that they said as they were hanging up was, man, I love coronavirus. We just got a $20,000 speaker for $2,000.
Oh God, it hurts me.
So number one, I have never been paid $20,000 to give a keynote, but like, why? Thank you very much. My first professional job was $13,000 a year with a meal plan and a cable package. Hello, hall directors, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that $2,000, which by the way is net 30 and they haven't paid me yet, that $2,000 is the first income I've made since February.
Wow.
It's very easy to ride two horses when shit like that happens.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when someone is, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take this on, right? So first off, if there is any part of you that thinks, I'll do the easy, fast route, please stop calling me. Just stop. That's a Number two, I always forget the name of this movie, and someone's going to find it in the comments. It has Seinfeld in it, so maybe you'll know. But it's like, always bomb, death of comedy, find the bomb and fail, something like that.
B movie, so I don't know. But yeah.
No, it's not a B movie. It's a comedian documentary. Somebody Google it, find it right now. But it's a list of comedians sharing what it means to seek out.
I just bombed or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. It's phenomenal. So that's the second thing I'd say. And the third thing I would say, whether you're new or not, but if you're doing this like entrepreneurial, solopreneur, P.S. I got fired from the other job, so I guess I'll do this. You are in charge of your own sense of urgency. I wish I had learned that earlier. And so when I first started, I was with a number of different speaking agencies that will remain nameless. And they made it urgent for me. And that was super expensive. But I was like following directions. And as I left those agencies and started going on to my own, what I realized is that I was using like a corporate prioritization process for solopreneurs, which doesn't make any sense. Because a corporate prioritization list, you have a number one that has like more urgency than number two by virtue of being numbered. Solopreneur, you got 147 number ones.
Yeah, you're right.
So how you going to pick which one of those 147 ones? Deadlines 3 weeks ago. You're late. Well, that doesn't so this rubric of prioritization does not apply to when everything is on fire, everyone is waiting, and the phone is ringing, and you are building the plane. While you are flying the plane, you are the product, the assembly line, the employees, the board of trustees, the boss, and the custodian. That doesn't work. So what you have to do is completely reframe the concept of urgency. And I consider entrepreneurship like a dinner party. There's the people that you invite that you have to invite because people are going to park in front of their house, right? So you're like, please come. Please don't be available. Please don't be available. And they show up. And then you got your old friends who show up early and like help you chop vegetables and stuff beforehand. They stay late to help clean it, right? That's the business. But if you're at a dinner party as the host, it's your job to connect them to each other, make sure everybody is having a good time. And then you can't just spend time with your close friends, right? So what all these aspects of your business, you need to like frequently visit, host your business, and that will build up those habits that will then help you assess what's urgent.
Jess, dropping dimes out here. You are in charge of your own sense of urgency. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you and I came up, in similar speaking agencies who were told, like, you got to spend money here, you got to go here, you got to go here. And this is the same thing. Like when I first started going to professional conferences for speakers, everybody was like, oh, you got to put 10 grand over here or 10 grand over here. You got to 10 grand, 10. And I was like, I have no grant. So where should I start? And it's really, it's overwhelming when there's so many places you could invest and you feel like you need to invest in them all, but you're like, I can't. Even this, like what we're on right now. I know I shared this in a much earlier episode, but I recorded a podcast about 3 or 4 years ago, where I had 8 or 9 podcasts in the can, had recorded them, never released them, didn't think they were good enough, and I didn't do it because I was like, well, I even getting started in that process, like, well, I can't do it because I don't have the right microphone. Oh no, I can't do it because I don't have this and that, and here we are. That now got scrapped, and it took me 6 years of this idea to finally bring this to life. And even now it's like, well, you don't got the right this or whatever, right? Like I had a ring light reflects weird in your glasses. They don't start yet. Right? Like all of those things where we build those barriers that keep us from starting. We successfully build our own barriers that prevent us from ever starting. And a lot of times it's because it feels like all of those things are urgent, because you watch a YouTube video on like, how do I start this? And they tell you, first you got to buy, right? It's like the classic thing when everybody makes fun of cooking shows, right? Just go into your pantry and grab some dried coriander from Guatemala. And you're like, I don't have that. I guess I got to make a frozen pizza, right? It's like, it's the same shit.
Mini pearl onions. I'm sorry, what?
Mini pearl onions.
I thought that was a woman in Opry. That's like a real thing, a mini pearl onion. I had no idea. It is real.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And I reckon they do look mighty fine. Jess, I want to go a little bit deeper with you. Can we do that?
I brought my shovels.
Let's go. Here we go.
Oh, not these two again over here. Okay, all right, break it up, you two. Enough of this here now. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. You're not smiling now, are you?
Okay, apparently we were getting a little bit too deep, so we had to pull it back a little bit there, Jess.
I'm not going to lie. I was like, is he showing the right video?
I intentionally didn't tell you that I was going to show that video because I just wanted to watch your face.
Oh my God. I have no idea what my face was doing, but I'll tell you what my brain was doing. My brain was doing, James is going to be shitting a brick right now because he clicked on the wrong video. And so I'm going to have to come out with something super profound about what looked like 2 humping alpacas and an angry goose. And go. Oh, you did it on purpose? Good job.
Yeah, good job. Thanks.
Welcome to White Women Trying to Fix Everything.
Oh, shoot. Look at me. I'm fogging my glasses up. I got the vapors over here. Jess, we're going to jump into a segment called Things You Didn't Know You Needed to Know About Us, but now you're glad you did. Still working on the title, but not really, because I like that it's long and obnoxious.
I love that title.
That's why Tina and I almost hyphened our last names, just for fun. Van Steenberg and Robolato would have been a good one.
I would like to point out, just for the record, because I am friends with both of you independently, and I believe I am friends with the third option, which is y'all as a couple. Mm-hmm. I have one other friend that I have no idea how to spell his last name. I have no idea how to spell either of your last name. Every time I ever type y'all's last name, I have to look this shit up on Facebook. Just so you know, you're not alone.
Perfect. I appreciate it. And also thank you to Brian. You did know. Brian knows.
That's because Brian knows everything and he's a genius pants. Although he will now say that's not true because I got your number on Bat Phone. He texts me all the time. And okay, Jessica.
I don't blame him.
Okay.
So, Jess, let's jump into this segment. This is where we share random facts about ourselves that people didn't know that they wanted to know. So here's one about me. I'll go first. So I have a weird obsession with my belly button, and I frequently stick my finger inside of it and play with it. I also occasionally then smell my finger. But I don't want to talk about that part, so let's keep it moving.
Excellent. We talked about this on the phone when we were setting it up. I thought you were kidding, so then I countered with my truth, is that I have a cosmetically created belly button to have a youthful experience, according to a doctor who is finishing up a surgery I was having, and an added bonus is that I now have a youthful belly button. I didn't know belly buttons aged.
Hold up. So you have a cosmetically curated belly button, which means you're a test tube baby, because you didn't have. I'm just kidding.
No,
So
you had a
belly button. Yeah,
I had a normal innie.
Yeah.
Had a surgery that had nothing to do with my belly button other than where the surgery was located. They had to remove the part that the belly button, my naturally occurring belly button, existed. Sure. They also beheaded a tattoo. So I have a beheaded owl tattoo now. That's a fun fact. So then in the stitching up of the surgery, the extra bonus is that he gave me his trademark cosmetically approved belly button.
So hang on. You said that it's a youthful belly button. Was that an option? Like, did they show you like a section
I did not know this was. No, I was out. I did not know any of this was happening. I woke up to
a youthful belly button.
Right. The artist, aka my surgeon, had decided to give me a youthful belly button.
They took one look at you and said, "You know what we got to do here? Let's do it."
Right. Well, to be honest, and I'm under anesthetic, my immediate response was, "Youthful belly button? Why didn't you look up 6 inches? I could have used a different kind of youthful lift." That didn't happen.
That didn't happen, Jess. That didn't happen. It's okay. I wanted that for you though. All right. Belly buttons aside, here is another random fact about me is that I once solo traveled to Iceland by myself. That's what solo travel is, in case for the people at home. So I was there for 5 days, and I booked the trip far in advance because I wanted to see the Northern Lights. It was in the dead of winter. And I wanted to see the Northern Lights, but I was there during the full moon that month. And so, therefore, I never really got to see them. So I spent the whole time there trying to see the Northern Lights. I saw them for a glimmer, but that is about it.
Planning. Probably knew about the full moon in advance.
Yeah, I guess the lunar calendar is, like a thing.
It is. It's like a whole rotational.
I don't know.
Thing. It's true. It's true. That sounds
like something the liberals made up.
It's entirely. There were tide charts and other nonsense. Fun facts about me. My father, who I admire, even though he's an interesting human, was a retired bodybuilder and power lifter. That is usually not people's first thoughts. But Lou Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger were 2 of my dad's best friends, so I grew up with them. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was also my governor at one point, was the person who taught me how to play chess. And I have a distinct memory of passing a Bluebell gallon of ice cream and a pound of peanut butter jar around the couch L when Conan the Barbarian came on TV the very first time. And I was leaning against Arnold Schwarzenegger's shin at the time because I was a child. And I remember going, "They let you on TV?" That's me.
That is an incredible. I did not know this about you or your dad, for that matter.
I have been saving some things for this interview, James.
You really have. Scott here missed the point, but it's still true. Love you, buddy. But here's the thing. Wait, not here's the thing. Where did you just hanging out with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Like, he was just at the house, just chilling?
I did not know that. This is why I am completely incapable of being threatened or intimidated by authority.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with these people without knowing anything about them or who they were or whatever. So The closest I ever came was I was a WWF fan as a child.
Sure, yeah. Back when it was WWF, yep.
Yeah, I distinctly remember swimming in the pool at the Greenleaf Hotel in downtown Dallas. And my dad walked up to the pool with Chris Adams, which was a wrestler's name. I don't remember what his real name was. And my dad was like, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Barbara." And I was like, "You blinded Kevin Von Erich." And I pushed him into the pool.
You pushed a pro wrestler straight into the pool. Incredible. Incredible. Jess, I am so glad to say that I know you now. That's you know, I mean, I was before, but also it sounds like we need to play some chess.
We could. I'm not very good, but I will.
That's incredible. I had no idea. That's awesome. So, Jess, let's jump back in. We are at a very important time in our country.
We're segueing from Chris Adams being pushed into a pool into racism.
Yes.
I love you.
Is that cool? I mean, we could figure out another segue. I mean, we could do like Chris Adams, Arnold Schwarzenegger, bad governor, bad president, racism. So here we are.
Every person I have mentioned that's influential to me is also a white person. How's that?
How's that? Thanks. So we touched on this a little bit before, but again, this is a really important time for our country. And I would be curious to know, for you, you have been in the game. You've been in the game teaching DEI stuff for a very long time. And doing such meaningful work. I'm wondering, during this time, since the sensitivities are potentially even higher right now than they have been in the past, and for multiple reasons, as a white person doing this work, have you felt yourself pulling back at all, or have you been like, "Nah, I've been here, I'm good"? Like, how has that experience been for you?
Oh, wow. What an interesting kind of dichotomy. Because definitely have not been pulling back. The thing that the hesitation I have around the term pulling back right now, like where that resonates for me, is marketing and selling as soon as COVID hit. And I was like, oh, can't do that yet.
Yeah.
But that's really the only time I have really, it's probably not the only time. It is the most recent time where I feel like I have made an intentional downshift pulling back.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's kind of up in the current, to ask him, am I pulling back around any kind of race work, systems of oppression work, privilege work? Absolutely not. Still here, full force, has not changed. I don't notice anything in my volume of work, because I'm a workaholic, dipping, slowing down, chilling out, nothing. I'm just doing more stuff for free. Most of the clients that I lost when COVID hit, who were doing direct D&I work, have now been furloughed or fired, and all of those budgets have been frozen, and I'm still doing the work, right? Like, so I would say zero pulling back has occurred. Where I thought you were going to ask, but you didn't ask, so now I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah, please. Yeah, no, I remember it.
I don't know that I believe that this is different. And if there is a pulling back, it's that I'm worried that, I don't know if this is ego or humility or just something different, but I'm worried that because I don't feel like this is any different, that's making me jaded and pessimistic. Because one of the big differences that I can articulate, right, is that if the boomers and millennials are the ones that are actually get along really well, then us Gen Xers, right? Like I'm almost 50. So the Gen Xers and Gen Z, we don't trust anybody. We don't trust systems. We are waiting for the bottom to fall out at any given moment. I grew up on powdered food because I was a latchkey kid and I don't need help from nobody, right? Like that self-reliance also is lonely, right? Like we also created Pearl Jam and Nirvana, right? Like there's a lonely existential threat that I am fine tapping back into, but I'm not if it's jaded and pessimistic. And I don't know where my age or my class maybe have changed those two things.
Okay.
But because I don't know that answer, I refuse to get off the accelerator.
Yeah. That is, it's super powerful to think about. Did we just get an echo? Can you hear that echo? Great. It's only on my side. That's fine.
Did I say like, no.
That's fine. So that is, that's super, I think a really great point that you just made is that it is the question of, is this different? And there's some things that certainly make it feel different from just like the national spread to the international spread of what's happened with the riots and things like that. And so there's that piece of it. But is it any different from the idea that Black people are being oppressed internationally? No, that is not different. No, that is not necessarily changed. That Black people are being killed at the hands of law enforcement. No, that is not different. So I think, but it feels like there are more people in the conversation than normal, even when you compare it to the death of Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, like some of those other individuals that unfortunately were hashtags, right? I mean, there were riots. There weren't as many, but yeah, I think that's why this feels just a little bit different in that way.
Well, and context matters, right? Like you live in Minneapolis. I live in a town of 6 humans and 3,000 cows on a cliff on the ocean, and we can't go anywhere. So that might be a thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the other pieces that just seem to resonate really truthfully for me is that when Barack Obama was president, as a pinko commie liberal, I was not allowed to be critical of him, his leadership skills, his decisions, things that he led the United States into. We're not allowed to talk about Barack Obama in a negative way, ever. Yeah. So then I feel like there were some conversations that I took place that we kind of whispered for 8 years because we were just not supposed to be critical. And probably some of that is like white guilt and white shame, like why you got to tear a Black man down, right? Like it is my like citizenry duty to be critical of a U.S. president, whether they are a Republican or a Democrat. Please sit down. I will give you a list. But I didn't feel like I could do that openly in the moment when Barack Obama was president. And so I feel like I witnessed an 8-year period of time where these conversations were happening, but they were being whispered. And partially Trump, partially Hillary Clinton, partially Joe Biden, partially Bernie Sanders, partially social distance, partially sheltering in place, partially it's an election year. Mm-hmm. All of those pieces together is like, we have not talked about this forever. Like, this is different. Like, I don't know that it's different, and I don't think I'm pessimistic. So one of the webinars that I did for free the other day, they introduced me to the term Pessy optimistic. I had not heard this before.
Good, a new term.
Yeah. I don't know that this is Pessy optimistic either. I just think that we collectively, and I don't think that's just white people, but we forgot what it feels like to actually be able to be like, no, this I do not approve of, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever this is. But because all those other veneers went away, now here we are. What I will say is different. 2 things that I think that I've experienced is different.
Yeah.
Number 1, 2 white men that I do not know very well have reached out to me to apologize to me because I was advocating for people who were being silenced in a particular Facebook group that we belong to. And 2 white men reached out to me and said, I just went along with the crowd. And I went back and I read your original thing and you were actually being an advocate. And I say that that's what I am, but I didn't stand up for you. I owe you an apology. And to be completely honest, I think in my lifetime, that is the first time a white man has ever apologized to me for something. And I'm struggling on an individual level and on a group level what to do with that. That's one thing that seems new to me.
Okay.
The other one is specifically about George Floyd's murder. Is I and my close friends, we talked about the officers who didn't intervene, right? So there's 2 on top of George Floyd, other than the one on his neck. Mm-hmm. There's 3 in the area pushing crowds away who have cameras. Yep. That's where the conversation entered. And I thought that was the easy part of the conversation. And so then I have really been trying to sit with, and I don't know it's the first time, but it's new for me right now, is that when have I literally been causing pain, being the problem, making a bad choice, whatever word you want to use there. I don't believe I've ever murdered anybody. But the officer who actually murdered George Floyd, when have I been that person? Not the bystanders. I feel like it's easy to go to bystanders of like when I should have done something.
Yeah.
But when have I been frozen in my own very bad choices where my ego has been grasping for my sense of entitlement to get me out of this scenario, which is the only space of grace I can give as to why he would still have been there for 2 minutes after George Floyd died with his hand cash in his pocket. Yeah. And that is the group level white behavior that I don't know that I've been self-reflective of. And that feels new.
I'm going to have you go a little bit more into that.
And now the alpaca video.
So when you say that, I mean, the bystander stuff is you said that's thinking about bystander intervention is not new. That's a conversation that's been happening. But I just need I guess clarification on my end is when you say that you're thinking about when you are the individual that is in the middle of doing something wrong. When have you ever stopped yourself or like what? I mean, tell me, like, go a little bit more into that.
So again, like, I don't even know that this is like actually something I need to be worried and concerned about as an individual, right? Yeah. So on a group membership level, and I'm only saying that because I can't think of an individual example, the bystanders that like should have done something, right? I can think of 1,000 examples where I shoulda. But I haven't consciously made the space to think about. And again, I don't know what this man was thinking or feeling at any given moment. And I'm guessing that for me and my humanity, if at some point in time I recognized that I have gotten myself into a situation where I have made bad choices, and this is getting ready to be what in my book I call it a crucible moment, right? Like this is a life-changing situation that if I could consciously know in the moment, my life is about to never be the same. Now, please keep in mind, I'm murdering a man. George's life is also never going to be the same, right? But as the white person, possibly frozen and paralyzed in the moment, where from a place of ego, how I interpreted the hand in the pocket and the extra 2 minutes, how I'm interpreting that is a sense of like entitlement to some kind of privilege system that somehow is going to get me out of this. And it never came. It never came. I don't know exactly how and when he actually got up. Yeah. And I'm fascinated by the moment of like, at what point could I be capable of causing pain, hurt, death, irreversible pain?
Yeah.
That my ego is not allowing me to stop once I've acknowledged the behavior, right? Like if at some point in time I realize like, damn, it's getting deep in here. I have fucked up. Okay, great. Why did I not stop my behavior in that moment? And the only thing I can come up with is that my ego would think something is going to save me.
Sure.
And that's not true. And I don't know that I have done this before, but I do believe that my ego and my sense of entitlement are certainly present.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never reflected or thought about that. That to me is very new. And if my work is about being self-responsible, like that is a level of responsibility and attention that I have determined is urgent for me to like figure out what that means for me.
Okay. You mentioned group dynamics in there, every group has a leader. It's not like the whole group in unison is like, we go, right? Like there is somebody who suggests something and then the group decides. And so that individual who in a group is the one who's like, what, in their head, they're like, what can we do right now that would be crazy? Or that would be whatever. It would just be like, it would be legendary. It would be story worthy. It would be laugh getting. It would be, making ourselves look better, cooler, stronger, whatever. That moment is such an interesting one where the ego has truly been the one screaming. Right, the ego is the one where it's like, I must do this, and where we see this a lot with men in particular, like where men love to one up each other. Men love to. It goes a lot back to science, right? Like when we think about the science of peacocking, right? Even just animals in general, but this is the way the human men do it, right? We get bigger muscles, we laugh louder, we push harder, we make our trucks bigger, those kind of things. But that the fragility of the ego is also fascinating. Mm-hmm. And so in hearing you talk about this, you're making me reflect as well. So thank you for that. But I wonder, as a lot of individuals are now grappling with, maybe I am part of the problem, or I have been benefiting from the problem, i.e. racism in this case. As many people are starting to grapple with that, and people haven't done anywhere near the amount of work that you have on it, the internal work, the training, the everything, the teaching, right, the practice that you've put into it. So for someone who this is really new to, and they're just starting to be like, oh, shoot, maybe I have benefited from a system that I didn't realize I was benefiting from because I was never intentionally doing so. I was just literally going with the flow. How do you help those individuals continue to do some of that work right now? Because it's super easy to be like, oh, shoot, that's a really dark, long hallway. I don't know if I'm ready for all that. Maybe I'm going to just stay here.
Yeah, I'm all about dark, long hallways, right?
Yes.
I guess the first immediate response I have is don't confuse my external work with my internal work, right? So quoting my career is mostly external work, and that's 20 plus years, sure. But internal work has been spotty at best. And I would like to think has been a consistent practice, but just because I regularly buy a new pair of running shoes every year, whether I need it or not, does not mean I run.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I have an amazing collection of sports bras, and none of them even have the tags on. But don't imply anything with that, right? So I think that's important to name. And where it seems kind of cliche to say we're all new to this, because as soon as you think you're not new, that's actually when you've kind of gone off an access road and you have to come back to the humility horse of like, oh no, because you feel comfortable and competent. Guess what? We got to shake up the Etch-a-Sketch again because you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
And I also think that whatever the entry point is a great entry point. And there's a significant difference between exhaustion and discomfort.
Yes.
And you can be exhausted and safe, and you can be exhausted and unsafe. And one of those has to do with self-care. and the other one has to do with a lack of habit. And you get to determine what that is, like, I know, like, I'm debating whether or not to say something because, like, I don't know exactly how heavy this is supposed to get or not.
It's a deep conversation. No, we're good. You're good.
I know.
We're in a diner together. There's nobody else here.
I know. It's a midnight diner, right? Can I get an extra side of ranch, please?
Cheers.
When you were talking after I said what I said about me reflecting in kind of a new manner that I'm noticing is new for me, without getting into, like, I'm not side railing this, but there was a moment when you were just talking, I like just remembered something, that there was a moment when I'll say the word attacked because it's probably less triggering for people. I was attacked by a group of police officers, and this is a very long story, but the short version is in the middle of the attack. Do you see how I just did that? In the middle of the attack.
If you want to tell the story, friend, we're here.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to.
That's right.
We'll see. But in the middle of the attack, because this is not one of the first experiences that I have had, I used to joke that I was very, like, Olympically good at, like, leaving my body and floating above the scenario and then coming back when it was safe. I have a shrink. Anyway, but there was a moment where I had thought I had floated above the scenario that was happening. And the thing that tethered me back to, like, oh, no, this is actually really happening, was one of the people who was there, who was a participant, actively involved. But at one point, I made direct eye contact with them. And there was the level of humanity that was present in their eye contact made me realize that I'm not the only person in danger here. And without developing, like, codependency or something like this, I deeply believe that our lives have taught us how to behave and how to show up so that we feel safe and prepared. And we are so convinced that we are right in how our life has taught us to feel safe and prepared, because the result of living our life the way we live our life is feeling safe and prepared. And if that system, which is directly under your individual control, if that system could be dismantled and you could realize you feel right because you are confusing accuracy with preparation and safety, if we could dismantle that, we could potentially become more accurate, which would involve listening, paying attention, hearing about problems that you have never experienced and recognizing them as gifts. So somewhere in there, your question was, what about new people? New people have done just as much work as old people who have done this work for years and years and years. They just don't know it yet. But that's because every interaction, every conversation, every human being, every sidewalk, every single person that comes by goes through your lived experience. Like, one of my favorite sentences from Courageous Conversations is every sentence has a history. I'm messing up my own power quotes. Every sentence has a history. And I believe each interaction with another sentient being also has that history with it.
Yeah.
And that is actually under your conscious and unconscious control. So that's the beginning of the internal work that is never over. Yeah. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
But actually, first of all, thank you for sharing, what of that story you felt comfortable sharing with us. That sounds like it was a very traumatic experience. And what, in hearing that story, what it also just got me thinking about is this idea that we have the choice to ignore what's been happening in this country if we would like, or we have the choice to look at it in the face, right? My dad wrote a poem one time where he said, I looked death in the face today and it winked back at me," or something like that. And it's just, we have that choice of looking people in the eye. And maybe looking people in the eye is also actually listening to their story and not telling it for them, or not even for them, telling their own story to them about how they should feel about what's been given to them. And so we have that choice to look humanity in the eye and actually see what's been going on and see the humanity, or we can see what we want to see. And in starting this work, whatever your starting point is, and whether you're starting to name it or you're starting to start it, or you've been doing it the whole time, whatever. But I think it's making the choice to pull back the curtains, to take the sugar off the Advil, to, whatever, insert, an analogy. It's similar to that here.
The language I like to use is, what if it is?
What if it is?
What if it is?
Yeah.
So when people are like, "Wow, wow, wow," well, what if it is? What do you mean, what if it is? What if it is? Like, they'll just keep traveling down their, like, doesn't make any sense, prepared, safe conversation place, and you just keep saying, what if it is? Like, well, that doesn't make any sense because I've never experienced it. Great. What if it's true for them? Like, well, I don't know about it. Great. What if it's true for them? Like, that's the curtain opening moment, right? Is that from a privileged dominant place, our collective entitlement to know everything is so comforting that it is from that, like, cozy sleeping bag of entitlement that people are reading White Fragility and being like, oh, I have work to do, right? Like, enjoy yourself, right? Like, you have two options, right? Is that, one, you magically switch and become a subordinated and marginalized person in our culture, or you take on an uncomfortable hobby. You get to pick. And my optimism is that I think more people are beginning to pick, I'll take on an uncomfortable hobby. And that feels really shitty. But at least it's acknowledging that they are consciously aware that they are not choosing this.
Yeah.
That could be a dismantling of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where we are at in a month, in November, in a year, to see, what are the lasting impacts of this, so yeah.
Just to pull that sentence, right? Like, what are the lasting impacts of this? Just say that for the next 100 years, right? Like, what are the lasting impacts of Trump being president? What are the lasting impacts on democracy? What are the lasting impacts of a global pandemic? Like, yesterday on the news, like, there was I'm going to screw all this up, but, like, I'm walking through the living room, we're watching the news, and, like, war in Yemen was paused because of COVID-19. And I'm like, whoa, what? I thought they were starving. Like, how many bad things can happen in Yemen at one time, right? Yeah. Like, hi, suburbanite, how are you doing? Right? Like, it is the layering of pain and suffering that exists in the world is a hobby of my attention. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to settle for some discomfort.
Yeah, you put that in a brilliant way. Yeah, for sure. Settle for the hobby of my discomfort. Friends who are listening and watching this, I hope that you will make the choice to settle for the hobby of your discomfort and dive deeper into it. Jess Pettitt, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll hang out. We're going to do some Q&A with you. If people have any questions for Jess, make sure that you put those in the chat right now so we can get to those. Any questions, we're both open books. And for those of you that are tuning in on the podcast, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe it. And please, if you can leave a comment or review, that would be really amazing. We'd really appreciate it. But thank you to our guest today, Jessica Pettitt. Really appreciate you all for listening. Take care.
And podcast listeners, check the link out for the alpaca video.
And Jess Pettit's Q&A as well, for sure. Y'all take care. Thank you so much. Jess, thank you.
For the lighthearted conversation.
Here's the thing. That's what this is, right? That's what a diner conversation is, right? It's those deep conversations that you don't expect to get into, but all of a sudden you're there for 3 hours and you're like, holy shit, this was a life-changing or really this is a crucible moment conversation even.
Just so you know, so that none of your voices are going off, I don't know that I would tell anybody the full story, even in a diner at 3:00 in the morning over milkshakes.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really pieced together the whole actual happenings of the story. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to name, it's not that I didn't think you or your audience could handle it or the tone of the show, although I could use those as very easy excuses. So I'm making sure that I'm being transparent that probably was a convenient hook to not go there. But I haven't even talked to my husband in full detail about the particular situation, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't want, this is another thing, is that specifically as a white woman, I don't want my pain and experiences to recenter the conversation when we're talking about something I do not experience. It is a one-off that I experienced police brutality. Mm-hmm. One-off. 100%. Yeah. So that I just wanted to clarify that. So
yeah, no, you're good. I had no objections and nothing. Yeah, it's your story. You tell as much or as little of it as you want, and I'm grateful that you told what you did, for sure. I don't know what questions you all have for Jess. Again, maybe it's about her belly button for sure. Brian Cotton is still floored that the Terminator taught you how to play chess.
Yeah, I over-prepared, so I also did my 3 most influential comedians.
You did?
Mm-hmm. I followed directions, and I read the chat.
3 most influential comedians. Let's hear those, and then we're going to get to Austin's question.
Oh, can't wait. Do you want to go first to Austin?
Now it's awkward, so.
I know, but it's Austin, and he's one of my favorite peeps, and I didn't know you'd have so many of my friends on this thing.
Great. Let's get Austin Arias' question up here because we do love ourselves some Austin. Here we go. What are the 3 things colleges and universities should be doing right now to respond to the Black Lives Matter movement and the state of our country and to show commitment to their students and staff?
Top 3 things. So number 1, I'm going to say clarity is kindness. So even though it seems unrelated, what is happening in the fall cannot just be an economic capitalist decision. It needs to be a decision that is deeply rooted in community and what that community stands for. Clarity is kindness. I do not need a 75,000-page statement about why it might be that some lives, particularly Black lives in this month, matter. You can just say 3 words. That's all. It works. Clarity is kindness. That'd be number 1. Number 2, I would say the state of our country, Black Lives Mattering, the commitment to student and staff. Those are 3 very complicated things because I don't actually believe most colleges and universities know exactly how they would answer any part of this question in under 10 words. Mm-hmm. Because we make things way too complicated because they have to be the right 3,000 words. Challenge. So I guess number 2 would be to challenge general counsel, MARCOM, leadership, administrators, or whatever to remember who signs your paycheck and just dismantle capitalism inside higher education. That'd be great. Can I number that middle one? Go fish called Wanda style. Middle one. Third one that I would say is, and I'm curious how my work is going to be impacted by this, but 100% zero diversity and inclusion strategic planning committees should ever be tolerated without an action step within a week. Why do I say that bold claim? Is that none of us were prepared for a global pandemic. We didn't even have an existing committee yet. And these committees formed, and we made very fast decisions based on very erroneous and limited information, and built that airplane while we were flying it, and are still working with new information because we actually took action instead of writing another palm frond report that comes out 8 years later about something that happened a decade ago. Those would be my 3 things. Just those.
Just those 3 simple things. Yeah. Yeah, right. As quickly as COVID proved to individuals that they could pivot, I'm not here for your sob story or your long-winded answers.
Or another survey. You have plenty of information.
Yeah.
Please move along.
Mm-hmm.
We shifted literally our entire economic system before we had testing. We're good.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and try something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But make sure there's at least 7 committees involved.
And I would like to add, this is why I no longer work on a college campus.
Yep. There it is. I love that. Jordan has an even deeper question. What kind of ice cream are you having? What's in that bowl?
So special for you, I saved ice cream for dinner. Recently, my husband, who basically lives under a rock and is genetically predispositioned for social distancing, has never heard of this particular kind of gelato and really likes the container.
Okay. Shout out. That's okay. This show is actually brought to you by Talenti, so don't worry about it.
Talenti, I don't know how to pronounce it. Gelato. And this one is, what did they have? Double dark chocolate. I had to put it towards the light. Walk towards the light, Megan. He likes the container. And so just, I'm a giver. I am now forced to eat a lot of this ice cream so we can have the containers for some gardening project, something. I have no idea. I get to eat ice cream. He likes the containers. I'm a giver.
There you go. I like that. There it is. Do you know Chris Gibson?
Don't know.
Okay.
Evidently, I did something to his sister.
All right. We'll have a conversation about that in the bar the other night.
That's interesting because I don't drink and I don't go out of my house right now. Although, what is funny is if we're talking like old school, I probably did harass your sister in a bar. Those were in my skinny alcoholic days, though.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, there we have it. Jess, a question for you, from me, is a bit selfish, but I hope that's okay. As someone who is newer newer to the DEI work and teaching it. As of right now, it's a very interesting time because, and this is you are a safe person to ask that as a fellow white individual, and so let me also name that. But do you believe that this is a time where individuals who do have experience and knowledge in this, even a little bit, should be trying to have more conversations, or should we be sitting down and listening? Like, what do you think that looks like?
Yes. So, in one of the conversations I facilitated today, a woman articulated that she's noticing her intentions when she's entering spaces, white woman, when she's entering the space and the language that she used, and she is unfurling her white savior cape, she needs to get out of the space. And when she is entering the space prepared and vulnerable to learn, give, see what happens in that space, then she's showing up. But if she's showing up as a superhero, she needs to leave. And if she's showing up as herself, then she should stay. And that's how she's been kind of navigating that. That resonated with me. And I don't know if my ego is so big that I wouldn't notice if I'm pulling out my cape. There have definitely been some moments where when I'm listening to everybody read all these books and I'm like, or my book. hello, like I made a marketing choice to do this Trojan unicorn diversity training, and now nobody's reading my book. Like, what? You read my book, right? Like, there's definitely that showed up. I should not be leading a conversation from that space. That seems a given, right? But I haven't entered a space yet where I didn't feel like I should be there. And I think it's because I have attended so many, specifically whiteness conversations, where I'm a student. I wasn't in charge. I'm not the leader. Mm-hmm. And perhaps doing that is why this week I have 3 different things happening where I'm talking about whiteness.
Yeah.
But I've attended 30 related to being white. And so maybe because I did humility horse for a while, I feel a little bit more okay. Like, okay, this is my story about being white and talking about it.
Yeah.
But I haven't, we talked about this before the show, but I have not experienced the need to sit down. Mm-hmm. And again, I think context matters. You're in Minneapolis.
Sure.
I am in a predominantly white town that thinks it is like hidden itself in the redwood forest away from racism. False. We need to talk about this. So
yeah,
I brought it up to a bank teller the other day.
Right in the middle of that transaction. I got one other transaction I got for you over here, bank teller. It's information.
How's this going for you?
Yeah. Right, yeah.
You may remember, I think it actually went viral, but there was an image of a white woman holding a sign against wearing a mask. And the sign has a picture of a slave wearing a mask and said that muzzles are for slaves and dogs. Do you remember this picture?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my city hall.
Really?
That's our local high school Spanish teacher.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I have not felt the need to sit. But I also can't leave this zip code.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be different.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a beautiful redwood forest, though. But alas, not magical. Tina has an interesting question. Also, it's kind of a follow-up, I guess, a little bit to that. But, what happens when you get it wrong as a white person who's trying?
I have no idea. No, I saw the question. So do you need to keep reading it in case people are listening on the podcast or something? Huh?
Go ahead. No, you're good. No, I don't. Oh, so the answer is no. You're good.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking about access. Not everybody can read the question.
Yeah, this part's not on that podcast, so don't worry about it.
Oh, I don't know these things. You run your own show. Good job.
Get inside my head.
I actually just censored myself. That is when we know we're having a good diner conversation. Okay. What do you do when you get it wrong? I plan on getting it wrong. I try to plan on getting it wrong because that is how I diffuse my defensiveness for the few rare moments that I have been gifted with some information about getting something wrong. Because the 1 or 2 times that I might actually get called in for like Monday, don't do that again. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, that I'm completely unconscious to, where I also got it wrong. Again, the hobby of my discomfort. Mm-hmm. I am not entitled to getting it right. That was a very hard pill to swallow, but it took a lot of pressure off of my perfectionistness, right?
Yeah.
I'm not entitled to getting it right. Nobody actually expects me to get it right except for me. So just stop, knock that off.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like when people ask, well, how do I do this without offending anyone? If you went and lived in a cave, you're going to offend your Aunt Mildred for missing her birthday. So removing yourself from the equation is not an option. You are a hot mess. Truth. And you are out interacting with the public. God help us all.
Yeah, I like what you said there. That was that was powerful. I think this is always, it's a place where because of the perceived increase in sensitivity and everything, I get the analogy that I've been using is sometimes it feels like I'm walking across a frozen lake, but when you walk across a frozen lake, especially the one that we're currently walking across, there's only one option because the other two options aren't acceptable. One is going back to where we came from, and the other one's just standing there because eventually, boop. And so like you can't stop, you can't go back. So the only thing you got to do is you got to keep, walking like you're about to take a huge shit, like a penguin, and just keep it moving. And I mean, the forward is the only direction.
I mean, that brings up a oldie but goodie, Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria, and the moving sidewalk, right? So
tell me about that.
Culture, etc., is this moving sidewalk. For those of us that miss airports, like this is going to be upsetting for a moment. So moving sidewalk is moving from this way to this way, whether you like it or not. You can just stand there. You're going to get there. So being an ally or an advocate is acknowledging that and consciously flipping around and walking against the grain on a moving sidewalk, which is hard, right? And like you give up and you backtrack and you got to keep it going again. It's a never-ending belt, so it's not like you're actually going to get anywhere. But if you walk faster and around the obstacles, right, like people and strollers and something, you walk around the obstacles faster than it is moving you, you will actually make some progress. But the real question is, what are we walking towards if we're walking backwards on a moving sidewalk? And I'm not a very religious person, but I believe we created the concept of hate. We have created the concept of evil. And so I would like to think that we are moving backwards towards like the purest form of humanity that has been jacked up by the auto moving sidewalk that somebody, probably looks like me, probably more likely like you, except I'm there on the front porch making you lunch. So me, created a system that benefits a very few people. So walking back towards it is actually walking across all of these social constructions so that we can get back to the purest form of humanity. That is a belief I have.
Yeah. I'm going to chew on that one. I like that one. I like that one. Jess, I appreciate you coming through. If we can clap it out one time for Jess Pettitt, make sure that you check her out. This is her book is called Good Enough Now. The website is Good Enough Now. And Jess, thank you for being a true luminary in my life as a friend, but also in many lives as someone who just is not running from conversations that need to be had. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add, if anybody's interested, but this is the time for the book club, isn't it? So if you go to goodenoughnowbook.com/club, then I'm actually I've created a project or whatever that is an asynchronous turnkey, go at your own pace process of going through all the different activities.
Yeah.
So if that is useful or helpful, please visit.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check it out. The book is great. We're getting some love here. Shout out to Sylvie. We got Austin, Brian Cotton, Aru. I'm not sure if I said the name right.
One of my RAs. I wasn't even gay yet when we worked together.
That's incredible. Jess Pettitt, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and love you, friend.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. Y'all take care. Be well. Let's do this. Thank you so much for coming to this episode of Diner Talks. My friends, we are here every single Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure you come back for us next week and let me know what you want to be in the top three. If you name a category, I'll put it in the show next week. So what do you want in that top three? And Ken, I'll thank you so much. In the meantime, keep asking hard questions, keep having meaningful conversations, and keep being a badass. Y'all take care. Be well.